Hello, and welcome to Property Mastermind podcast with Bob Anderson and Hilary Sexton. Today we are talking how not to get your development application refused. Bob will enlighten us, teach us, and tell us a few tricks on how to not get it refused. It's going to be a great episode. Jump on into episode 121. Hey, and welcome to episode 121. I'm Hilary Sexton. This is Bob Anderson if you're watching us on YouTube. And we are talking development applications today, how not to get yours refused, because they do get refused sometimes. Before we start, though, bit of housework, Bob. What's the tip for the day?
Well, something that happened to me this week caused a few issues. And my tip is this: get all your emails backed up regularly,
Oh,
because if you don't, you have a problem. You could lose some.
no, yeah, it can be a bit stressful.
I'm trying to find them.
They are there. We just got to find them somehow.
Back them up regularly.
Anyway, Bob, welcome to the podcast. I
Thank
didn't
you.
say. But this is take 4. We had a bad start tonight, didn't we?
Well, we did. We got a noisy puppy, and I hope she's quiet down there on the floor.
Oh, so we actually started take 2 and take 3 with the dog on the lap. Then we're like, no, can't have the dog on the lap. But anyway, we started take whatever this is, take 5, and we're on. Okay, before we get started, we have a copy of Property Millionaires Exposed. Obviously, Bob says go to page 121. This week, that goes out to Tom King. So, Tom, you are the lucky winner of our book this week. Congratulations. And, Bob, before we get started on our topic of development applications,
Yep.
I wanted to do a bit of self-promotion again.
You should. You
I
deserve
should.
to. This is your podcast.
This is my book. I started this, and it's 121 podcasts later. For those lacking confidence or looking for a fantastic Christmas gift, my book, 3 Wines In. It's how to increase your self-confidence today and succeed in all areas of your life without the hangover tomorrow. It is a book that teaches people how to be more confident, and property development is a
confidence game.
So it is a great book. Grab a copy off hilarysexton.com, my website, and it is a great Christmas present. So if you've got somebody in your life who likes to read, it's a bit of a story, bit of self-help intertwined with it. I think it'll make a great movie. And I'm getting very good feedback. So
You are.
Yeah, it's been great, the feedback, the people that are reading it and enjoying it. So it was my first book, and even the editor, when they edited, they thought, yes, it's a winner. So if you're looking for something, a gift for somebody, or maybe you want to increase your confidence, it's your go-to. The other thing I wanted to bring up before we moved into our topic is, so I was just looking through at reviews for podcasts. And yeah, I have a second podcast, which is mine, about self-confidence and self-improvement, all those sorts of things. Bounce back better if you're into that. But when I looked and was reading a few people's podcasts, I saw people had written reviews that were quite harsh, not on ours, on some other podcasts. And I thought, what? So I started reading, and we often talk about the keyboard warrior. Why is it acceptable to say such horrible things to people? And would you do that to somebody's face? And nobody would. So why is it acceptable online? But one comment I read, which I said to Bob, why do they think they can say that? They said, about a particular person was promoting their goods and promoting their stuff on their podcast. And I think people forget that this is part of our business as well.
Yeah.
I mean, do you go to work and expect not to get paid? This is part of our business. So we are allowed to promote stuff.
You are.
We actually are. So yeah, that was kind of just something I really think that the world needs to understand how business works, eh? They don't quite get it.
Shake your head at people like that.
I do. So it was kind of a bugbear. I was like, oh, why would they be so horrible to somebody? I mean, personally, I didn't really like the person that we're talking about, but that wouldn't be mean to them.
No.
At all. Anyways, Bob, we are talking development applications.
Yeah.
So can we start with you explaining the development application process? Just quick overview.
Well, it's going to vary. It does vary a little bit as you go around the country, because it's a council by council thing, and there's also state legislation over top of it all. So, anything I say is going to be fairly general. But quite often, we need to get a development permit, and so from the council, the likelihood of getting it successfully approved has, there's things that you need to do, and it's not something that you want to rush into. And the process is typically, yeah, it could be something like, let's say a duplex, keep it simple. We'd have to get an architect to do up our plans. We get a survey, we get a town planner. Town planner puts a report together. This is pretty simple. A little bit of engineering goes to council, and they process the application. It goes through various people at council, the council engineers, the council assessment officer, probably the landscape, different people internally, commentary, make sure it complies with the planning scheme in all respects, the design. And if it does, you get an approval. And that's what we want. Obviously, big projects, much more complex, lots of moving parts. It's going to take longer. Maybe, a little bit of, will it get through? Will it not get through? But we want it to get through. We often go to a lot of trouble to find a deal, and we want to get an approval. And not only that, we're quite possibly settled on it. We
Mm.
might own this site. Very important that we get a development permit,
Mm.
development approval.
Yeah, so you just switched the words out there, and that was just something I wanted to clarify. Development approval, development permit, same,
Well, pretty
but
much.
different.
Yeah, well, some states use different. A development approval is when you get an approval from council, you get your conditions and so forth. But you do have a period of time generally where you can do a little bit of negotiation, a little bit of discussion about a few of the finer points on that, and maybe you know get it changed. Then it gets approved. Then that becomes the permit. The plans are then stamped, approved. So development approval, almost a development permit.
So,
Yeah.
so how not to get it refused? What are some of the tips that you would think are vital?
Yeah. Well, look, the first thing to say is it a fully compliant application? Because a compliant application means it ticks every single box as far as the council is concerned within the planning scheme. You're not looking for any relaxations. Everything fits perfectly, and that's a fully compliant application.
What are
That
the chances of a fully compliant application being rejected?
not strong,
Mm.
but can happen, and I've had it happen to me.
Why would that happen, Bob, if it's fully compliant?
It's councils are a law unto themselves, and sometimes they take a view on things that they don't want or they don't want to happen, and even though it might fit the criteria, doesn't it's not an absolute guarantee. And look, if it's fully compliant, it should be pretty good.
Yep.
But sometimes you want to just stretch things a little bit. And look, a lot of the applications I've done, that I've gotten approved, you can a little bit. And so what you need is a really good town planner,
Mm.
a town planner who's experienced, had a lot of experience with that particular council, knows the people in there, knows the assessment officers, the engineers, the town planners in there. Give yourself the best shot, get the best town planner you can get your hands on as well. And if there are some areas that you want to not fully comply with, then that town planner will assess it and have a look at what your likely chances are of getting that through, or what sort of an argument that they could put up that would get it over the line. And look, some councils are a little bit flexible in some areas.
Mm.
They're not absolutely black and white, and perhaps you can get some little dispensations through
I
as
remember
well.
recently we had the council, there was that change on a duplex that we had going on. It was one of
Yeah.
our mentoring students, and he had a problem with setbacks. They changed the laws on
Yeah,
setbacks,
and
wasn't it?
they can too.
Yep.
Well, they can change a policy inside without changing the planning scheme. So the planning scheme's pretty well locked up. It's a document, but council might decide that
The
their
tweaking.
internal policy is that they're going to go in a particular direction. It might be that they're relaxing on some things, but it might be that they're tightening up on some things
Mm.
as well. And so they will start on their application process to, even ahead of a change. They might be looking at reviewing a planning scheme in 6 or 12 months, and they've got an idea of what revisions they want to make to that planning scheme. They often start bringing them in to their assessments way early. I don't think
Mm.
they should. I mean, you should be judged on what it is at the time, but we know that that's what they do.
Mm.
And so a good town planner would be tracking not only their own applications, but applications from other people, and seeing which ones are getting approved, which ones might get knocked back, or what things council are asking applicants to do.
Mm.
You know, is there a little bit of a relaxation in some area? Are they really tightening up on other areas? And so, with that knowledge, they'd have a pretty good idea of what to put into your application, and give yourself the best chance of an approval.
We had other people in our community, and they got knocked back because there was that actual
Change.
change during their
Yeah.
process. And it went from they were they going to have 4 and they had to be reduced to 3? Was that what it was, or what was it? They changed that. It was another setback one, which
Setbacks can happen. I
yeah.
can remember even in Victoria when the garden area changed all of a sudden, and that dropped yield.
But these guys ended up going to VCAT because it was down in Victoria.
Mm,
So they actually fought council,
mm.
and which you got to remember, if you're doing that, then that's another 18 months to your
Well, it can add a lot of
development.
time,
Can,
yeah,
yeah. Is
depending
it
on how.
about 18 months in
Well,
Victoria? Was
a lot of stuff goes to VCAT in Victoria because councils are a little bit of a law unto themselves, more than some other states. But anyway, I'm sticking my neck out, but I don't care. That's just the way it is.
mm,
And so that VCAT does get quite a few. The Land Environment Court in New South Wales, Land Environment Court in Queensland, there's always appeals happening in there.
mm,
Probably less. It does get chocked up a bit, but not too much.
mm.
But back to giving yourself the best chance. I think get yourself the best town planner for a start. Um, Try and conform as much as possible. But if you're going to go for some relaxations, make sure that you've got a pretty strong chance of getting them. That can come out during the process. It's not just a matter of lodging your application and then you hear no more from them, and then you either get an approval or
Mm.
you get a knockback. It's not like that, because there's quite a bit of back and forth goes on in the process. And council will generally look at your application and then they'll come back with a request for further information. And they'll have a look at things that they don't think fully conform, and they'll draw attention to those. And they generally ask you to, like to
Tidy it up a bit.
tidy up, to change your plans. So you might have a setback relaxation, for instance. You might say, let's say the rear boundary setback, it says you have to have 6 metres and yours is 5 metres, and they'll say, oh, your rear boundary relaxation doesn't conform under da 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 da. Please amend your plans. But then your town planner, in conjunction with your architect, might go back and say, look, yeah, sure, we know it should be 6 metres. The reason it's 5 metres is that the 6 metre setback is about privacy between, the two properties. The property over the back doesn't have any windows on that side of the house, therefore privacy is not an issue. Therefore, we believe, it should be relaxed, or whatever it is. I'm making this thing up on the run. And council have a
But
look
that's a
at it,
great example, Bob.
and they say, well, look, that's reasonable because the reason it is 6 metres is for this particular reason. That's not the case in this, so we'll allow the relaxation. And so that's what you need: definitely the right town planner, and conform as much as possible. But things you think you can improve your design or whatever with, that you can get away with, you give it a go. If they become really hard nosed about it, during this process, then your planner might say, look, they're just not relenting on this. I thought we could get away with it, but we can't. We're going to have to mend it.
Mm.
We're going to have to make some changes, some design changes or whatever. Either add something or take something away, whatever it is that's required, and that can happen. And then this sort of back and forth process can go on a little bit, and it can be a bit slow. I mean, some councils are slower than others on processing. Some states are a bit slower even on processing.
Crikey, we just had one go through in 2 weeks.
Yeah, don't tell everybody that.
I didn't say where it was.
No.
Hey,
But,
Bob, I've just got a question, which I wonder if it works, or what will happen now. We've got this housing shortage. We've got a predicted massive growth in housing shortage coming.
yeah.
In the hundreds of thousands. Do you believe that councils will start being a bit more relaxed, or do you think that will not
We
happen?
need them to be faster more than we need them to be
Right, yeah,
relaxed. I don't think they're going to get any faster.
you don't. So
No.
then, what do you think
Look, a
about?
lot of the well, look, it's a big subject when you talk about housing and the fact that we've been undersupplied of housing, and more so as a lot of overseas migration, happens to so many people due to come into Australia and coming in as we speak. So housing shortage, housing affordability is a big subject. It could be addressed a lot, and it needs to be addressed a lot at both council and state level.
Yeah.
The process needs to be streamlined a lot more. Look, legislation's come in over the years supposedly to streamline things, but invariably gets choked up at council level.
Mm.
I don't know. There's also, I don't know.
Okay.
It just gets bogged up in there, and it needs a big shake up.
So could we have some examples, Bob, that you've had good and bad experiences, you yourself, or students, or people that we've worked with or you've worked with? So if we can we go with what's been the best experience you've had, apart from me just saying that 2 week one, but maybe where you've turned council around and it's been an easy process because they saw the application and you were able to get relaxations that you were after. What's a great example you've got
Oh,
we've had with that?
look, some have flown through fast,
Yep.
but I'm thinking of some I've been able to get some relaxations. Like there was a 4 townhouse project I did. What's that joint venture I did with my son Luke? We went for 4 relaxations in that. One was the front boundary setback. One was the rear boundary setback. One was the gross floor area. We went over a little bit on that with the amount of, the floor area of the buildings. We went a little bit over. And I think we went fractionally under on the landscaping area.
Mm.
We got all 4 of those through.
What was that, do you think?
Well, they weren't big things, but the town planner had a reasonable argument as to why those things should have been accepted,
Mm-hmm.
and how he, conformed in and over conformed, if there's such a word, in other areas as well. And that argument got accepted, and all 4 of those, we weren't way out.
So he overconformed in some areas, and at that time, at that
Well,
particular
we
council,
may have offered more
money.
no, no more money.
Did you offer money?
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah.
We might, like private open space. You have to have a certain amount of that. We might have been excess private open space,
Right.
excess lands, excess this or whatever it
Okay.
was. But then we're a little bit under
Yep.
here, a little bit under there, and we had a reason. Like the rear boundary setback was that one I just mentioned there, because it's normally a privacy thing, but the privacy wasn't an issue because of the type of building that was over the back, and therefore they said, "Oh, that's fair enough," Because I think we went from 6 metres back to 4.5, which was quite a big change.
Wow, that is a bit.
But privacy, which is the point of the whole thing, wasn't an issue, and we got it through. So, but I've had knockbacks as well. I mean, I had one big knockback a few years ago on a fully compliant application.
Oh
Compliant,
yeah,
and that required to go to court, protracted court case. It costs money, and eventually you win.
yeah. We talked about that because we talked about we knowing to fight on a development a couple of podcasts ago, and I suppose this does tie back to that. So, at what point you choose, and we decided,
Yeah.
the lawyer would give you some great advice and you'd run with that. But the idea is that, that example there that you're talking about, your big one, that was just nepotism or something
Yeah.
like that. There was something going on.
Yeah,
And
well, it had nothing to do with town planning.
it was just
quite political, really.
yeah. And one day you can write a book or do a TV show on it. But
if we've got time.
Yeah, something like that. But
too busy getting projects approved to do that.
Yes, exactly. So, Bob, what has been one that you thought would have gone through and didn't, apart from that one there, even maybe with a mentoring student or something, and then what did you do to combat that?
Well, what you want to do is you don't want to wait till it gets knocked back,
Right.
because if you wait until you have, until it's rejected, let's say, then there's no alternative then but to go, you end up in court if you want to go that path. So really the negotiation has to happen before you get a refusal. I do know in some areas, I know, and people do this, councils can be extremely slow, and even though there's certain timeframes in which they have to do certain things, they just don't.
What are they doing, Bob?
Well, it's almost like they're a law unto themselves. I'm just not going, just can't do it in that timeframe. And I know a couple of developers who just go straight to court. What they do is they say, well, if they haven't done it in the normal timeframes, they just take it as a deemed refusal. They just say, well, I'll just take that as a refusal because you can't meet the time commitments, and then they go straight into appeal and go to court.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Would that be
they found that even though it
a
costs
faster
money,
process?
it's faster, and they said more economical in the long run. That's them. They're a pretty big developer, and they've got in-house,
Yeah.
legal counsel and everything, and that's just the way they do it. They just,
Wow.
go over the top of a council if they're not a council aren't, but the average punter, the small developer, it's a bit hard to sort of make that your model.
You have developed in all states, well, apart from Northern Territory, and still now with our students, and personally we both are. Where have you found to be the easiest? I know it's a kind of a big question because
Yeah.
councils are different, but if you had to look at states, have you found that some states are a bit easier to get stuff done in than others?
Well, it's not just a state
State,
thing. It
no,
can be a council
council.
thing. I can remember one mentoring student quite a few years ago was going to put an application in for a 3-story apartment block. It was in a city in New South Wales, and he said, "Oh, the town planner told me it should be out in 10 weeks." And I thought, "Wow, hang on, that's like it's not just a house, it's not just a duplex." And I thought, "Oh, I think you find it's a bit longer than that," because I was thinking, at the time where I was living, sort of thing, it takes 6-7 months. And he was wrong anyway. He didn't get out in 10 weeks at all. He got out in 11.
Oh
but
well.
that, I thought, wow, that's pretty quick. But that council was really on the ball. They were sharp, and they were very, they were pro development, and they just processed things really well.
Mm,
But there's different types of applications. Some require, public advertising where
mm,
it's open up for people to, either say they like it or object to it, whereas some applications are more closed.
mm.
They don't open up for public advertising. It's more a process that's done in-house at council, so they're quicker by nature. And there's variables. I mean, if there's a bit of a boom going on, if there's lots of development applications getting lodged, council tend to get bogged down. They're going to be slower. And some councils, when they get busy, they outsource to private
Consultants.
enterprise.
Okay.
So they might have, architects, town planners, engineers might work, 2 days a week for council,
Right.
helping them to process applications. But then some councils don't have the budget for doing that. And they just slow down, and slow down and slow down. But some are notoriously slow, and on purpose, I think.
Why would be the reason they'd
Oh,
be
I don't know what it
purposely
is.
slow?
You can have a council that's a little bit anti-development. I mean, I've come across the odd council that, you could say some are pro-development and some are more anti-development. Well, I think the one council, I don't even go there because they're just so heavy on environmental. And not, I'm not anti-environment by any means, but they're just like over the top.
It just stops the wheels moving.
Oh, if a koala scratched a tree in 1948 and the tree's still alive, like you won't, it must be koala. It's just like, it,
Ridiculous.
yeah, to the point of being ridiculous. Yeah, and it's just really hard work. So sort of don't go there. There's some developers. A friend of mine actually develops there. He spent years trying to sort it out and get on side and put up with it, but he sort of lives with it now, and he does develop. I mean, obviously things happen in that council, but it's not progressive. It's not real go ahead.
Mm. So, Bob, what about the fast track process? There is the fast tracking of applications.
Yeah, that's available in some states and some councils. I mean, we've got CDCs, in New South Wales. That's something that can fast track certain applications. Not every application in certain areas, certain councils. So you could see that, like even in Brisbane, for many years, probably 20 years, I think, there has been a thing called Risk Smart, which if the application ticks certain boxes, it can be dealt with privately. Look, councils are slow. I'll say it, they're slow. But if once you bring in private enterprise, they can do it a lot quicker.
Mm.
And so I think the thing called Risk Smart in Brisbane, if it ticks a number of boxes, it can be dealt with under the Risk Smart system. And that's where a private town planner actually does the whole assessment, goes through it, comes up with a decision, does all the conditions. Council have the ultimate say, and that goes back to council. They might fine tune a little bit, but that can be quite quick.
Mm.
You know,
Are they generally more smaller applications?
Yeah, I think up to last time I had a look was up to 10.
Wow, that's bigger than I thought it would
it
be.
couldn't have many issues. Like if you needed a flood report or certain reports that negated it, it
Yeah.
has to be pretty simple and straightforward. And then you've got CDCs, which some of our mentoring students are doing projects with them in New South Wales, where
Mm.
it's almost like a private certifier does the development permit and the construction certificate, the building permit, almost you know in one fell swoop sort of thing. And council ultimately have the final say, but that can be quite quick compared to the old way of council doing things. Because as soon as you take something off council and give it to private enterprise,
It speeds up.
it's going to go a lot faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it's about business functioning, and they have to make money,
Hmm.
like all
Yeah,
businesses. The
it's
councils don't.
commercially driven then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Bob, what about pre-lodgement meetings? I mean,
Oh yeah, we
how
haven't spoken about
often
them.
do you find the need for a pre-lodgement?
Yeah, so pre-lodgement, or sometimes called a pre-DA meeting, is when you're not quite sure how council are going to assess something. And so you have a meeting with them before you lodge your application. You need, the basic concepts of what it is that you want to do. And you may well have your town planner and, let's say, your architect attend, maybe even an engineer, depending on what the issues are. And you can set up a meeting with council. Some councils actually do it for free, but some charge you for it.
Mm.
And so you
What
can
are we
put,
looking at charge-wise?
those that charge could be anything up to, $1,500 backwards.
Per meeting, or just in
Yeah,
total for
well,
the
you only have
meetings?
one meeting.
Okay.
And some are actually free, and so they'll give their view on things. They might say, "Oh, look, we'd consider that, but we'd expect you to make these changes," or we flatly would refuse to allow that, or and you get a bit of toing and froing from the their assessment officer, whoever it is that's relative to that application. It could be a
Mm.
land subdivision, so it's no point having an architect there.
No.
But depending on what it is, and you get the minutes of the meeting back. They're not locked in stone generally. Like you could still do an application, and they could take a totally different attitude. And I've even seen that happen. So it's worth something. I've rarely done them. I don't normally do them, but it's been in times when I wasn't quite sure how council are going to deal with something. There might be, for instance, a change in the planning scheme coming up. And I've heard that council are going to start to initiate some of those changes
Tightening up
ahead of
early.
time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not quite sure. Well, you're going to deal with it under whatever the new planning scheme's likely to be, or under the current one, or is it some sort of a hybrid, or how are you going to deal with it?
Mm.
And so that might be a reason, for instance, to go and do it. Uh, we've just put an offer in on a site that if we get the offer accepted, we're going to have a pre-lodgement meeting, because there's just something that the planner and engineer say, look, the council could okay that, but we're just not sure which way they might go with it, and it's pretty important. And so we'll do a pre-lodgement on that.
Sometimes it's awesome when we do podcasts, because then I find out that we're putting an offer in a deal. I think I know the one he's
You
talking
know
about.
the one.
I do know the one, but I didn't know we'd got to there. So luckily we do podcasts, Bob. Oh, that's good
Hmm.
to know. We're putting an offer in. Yay. Well, that's exciting stuff. Okay, so that would be, so for that reason, you'll go to a pre-lodgement, and yeah, okay. So the reason I asked is because I do know one of our mentoring students, he went through the process. He's doing a 13-lot subdivision,
Yep.
and that he went to pre-lodgement with that, and that worked in his favour.
Well,
And I know he's listening. He
to
listens on 2-speed. Hello, Kyle.
to a degree, yeah. I mean, there's a few things that popped up there. There was some issues with the civil engineer as well, and timing. Timing wasn't great into COVID, but still, he's had his fair share of delays, but he's had some great wins as well,
For
because he
sure.
just picked up an extra lot.
Yeah, he did. That was great news. But that he experienced the pre-lodgement meeting and went through that process.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
faintly recall all that.
yeah, I do remember the stories.
Hmm.
Well, Bob, I think if we were to summarise the how not to get your DA, your
Not back.
refused, if you were to summarise in 3 bullet points, what would it
Choose a
be?
really good town planner,
Yeah.
experienced, and particularly with that council. Try and conform as much as possible, or if you're not going to conform, if you're looking for a few relaxations, make sure that you have a very strong chance of getting them. And, there is the chance to negotiate through the process, and, be prepared that you may have to make a few amendments on the way through.
Hmm.
But, it's back to having the right team again, really. And look, some councils are slower than others. Some are a little bit less helpful development-wise, and maybe, make your own inquiries as to where they are before you choose your patch.
And probably get educated. So just on that one, another plug for us, as this is our podcast.
And it's a darn good thing to do too.
Yeah, and it's a very good thing to do. We do have our 3-day workshop coming up on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of November on the Gold Coast. So if you would like to come along to that,
Looking forward to that.
it is a phenomenal event, and I suggest you come along. But reach out. We'll put a link below if you'd like to have a chat, or you could just go straight on and buy yourself a ticket. If you buy it as part of the bundle, you can bring a partner for free, which means you can bring yourself, your actual business partner, or you could bring your life partner if they're into property development or you want them to be. So that's coming up November 3, 4, 5. Come along to that. Yes, so that was your answer to it all, really. Get educated.
Yep.
And then, of
we'll
course,
be covering development applications and every other thing.
Yeah, they're very detailed, our workshops. After what number workshop is this one for you, Bob?
I think it's 78.
What about that?
78 workshops, 3-day workshops.
78 3-day workshops. Yeah, the man could actually do it, on his head with marbles in his mouth. But anyway, it's a great fun event. We hang out the whole time, and it's well
Great
catered.
community to be a part of too. Very helpful.
Yes. And that's about it. I think we can wrap up there. So thanks, everybody. We will catch up with you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye now.